In its quest to provide an open forum for discussion of controversial issues, this station allows hosts and their guests to express themselves without any significant censorship. You're advised that any views expressed by the hosts or their guests are not necessarily the views of Togi Entertainment or its partners.
Motherhood Incorporated proudly presents Military Mom Talk Radio live on TogiNet.com. Co-hosted by Robin Boyd and Sandra Beck, the owner of Motherhood Incorporated. Military Mom Talk Radio is here with a powerful platform for women to discuss their ideas, issues, and concerns with respect to the military lifestyle. Military Mom Talk Radio encourages you to share your experiences of being a military wife and mother. This show is dedicated to educating your family about the many resources that are available in both the public and private sector, and we'll be sharing helpful information from women all over the world. We'll cover everything military, from helping a family member cope with post-traumatic stress disorder, to navigating government programs dealing with family issues, to the struggles of deployment, along with being a working mother both in and out of the home. This is Military Mom Talk Radio, and here are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd.
Hey, military moms, this is Sandra Beck, and we have a great show today. We're going to be welcoming Margaret Brown. She is an author that wrote the book That Time, That Place, and That War. We're also going to welcome Military Writers Society of America's new president, Dwight Zimmerman. He's also a published author in his own right, a very prolific one. He's got a New York Times, I think it's a New York Times bestseller, book about Abraham Lincoln, and he's going to talk about some of the awards that were given out recently for some of our military writers, which is really outstanding. And Rob, I'm going to go right to a special guest today.
That's
we're
great.
welcoming. Yeah, isn't that? We're going to go welcome Lisa Dietrich. She's been on our show, both of our shows before, and she has a son in the military, and she's also going to give us a Veterans Day blessing. But before we get to the blessing, Lisa, I want to ask you, where is your son and how old is he?
My son is currently in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He is in the Special Forces. I had to think about that for a minute because he moves around. And he is 23 years old.
He's
and
23
he loves what
years
he's
old.
doing.
Does he? When he first said he was going into the military, what did you think about that?
You know what? He was an adult, and we first brought it up right when he was coming out of high school, and my husband and I encouraged him to go to college for a couple of years and think about it and pray about it, and he did. He went to 2 years of college, and then he went ahead and enlisted, and we were very at peace about that because he had thought it through. It wasn't a rash decision, and, as an adult, he made that decision with a lot of thought, and it's really what he wanted to do, so we're good with it.
That's wonderful. It's so stressful for our families, that have their family members here and overseas in the military right now. And you as a military mom can absolutely attest to the stress and the strain of not being able to reach your loved ones and being worried about them. And that's one of the reasons that I brought you on the air today, because you are a military mom. You are a very godly woman. And I would really like, and so would Robin, you to do a blessing today for our veterans, past and present, and our future ones that are coming up as we speak.
Well, thank you, Sandra. I'd be honored to do that. And here we go. Lord, we just thank you so much, God, for giving us freedom. And Lord, we just thank you so much for all of the men and women who have fought and served and lived and died so that we could be free and that we can speak and that we can live as we please in this country. And I just pray for your special blessings on the men and women who are serving currently. I pray for those who have served in the past. I pray that you'll just bring peace on them and give their lives fulfillment and meaning, and just let them know that there's a nation full of people who really, really appreciate and honor them for what they've done and what they've sacrificed for us. And we also want to pray for the men and women who will be coming into the armed forces, that you will just give them peace about it and give their families peace, and just let them know that the service they provide is just really, really appreciated and honored. We thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to serve our country and serve you in this way. In his name, amen.
Amen.
Oh, Lisa, that was beautiful. Robin, aren't you glad we didn't have to do that prayer?
Oh, there are so many times that I think our feelings get welled up, and I think it just takes someone with such grace as you have, Lisa, to be able to put those words together and be able to express our thoughts. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's an honor.
Yeah, well, I think, it's one of those things today, Rob, it's a really interesting time. I know it is for me when I think of being a little girl and going and marching in the parade for Veterans Day. And all the veterans were so old when I was little. I mean, granted, I was a little kid, but they just seemed so much older. And now, when I looked around at the recent Veterans Day celebrations and honorings, everybody was so young. A veteran today can be 19 years old.
Right, I know. I didn't tell you, Sam, we have one of our nephews is being deployed in the next few weeks. And so it's as many as that are coming home. There are still some that are going over. So I think we always have someone serving somewhere. We always have. We always will.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important that you mentioned that, Rob, because there was so much talk in the election last week and, about bringing the troops home and all these things. And there are still lots of our young men and women being sent abroad and families struggling with deployments and struggling with multiple deployments. And on this Veterans Day, it's really a wonderful time to honor our veterans. But I also, loved what Lisa said about honoring the families as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Did you have very many celebrations in your neck of the woods, Sam, for Veterans Day yesterday or today?
We did. We had quite a few. We had local celebrations a lot at the ground levels in the local parks. We had one in our local park, and, a lot of people came out. We live in a military dense neighborhood, so
sure.
We've got a lot of people from, Edwards Air Force Base. There's a lot of Marine families up here whose sons and daughters are in Camp Pendleton, and, it's so sobering when you stand there together and you see the generations of service men and women. And I was quite pleased, I have to say, to see so many women turn out, women service members turn out for Veterans Day. That's something I really hadn't seen much in the past.
We've had an awful lot of youth groups doing things, but it was really nice to see as many come out. Our nearest city is Manchester, New Hampshire. There were a lot of people who came out to view the parade, and I think it's a different kind of celebration. Just as Memorial Day is a different kind of celebration, I'm thinking it's out of respect. Not, I guess, celebration is a different word. You often take that word differently. So I'm glad that so many people are openly embracing the ability to honor, the freedom to honor these all of our veterans. It's
absolutely, because it sounds a little funny to say Happy Veterans Day,
Right. I know. I can't quite put my head around that. Because you're right. We're paying respect. We're not. We're not giving gifts and baskets. We're saying thank you.
That's right. We got to thank Dwight Eisenhower for changing it from Armistice Day to Veterans Day, because Armistice, I don't think anybody would even know what it meant.
I think it's interesting, and I did find something that I'm going to read at the end of the show today. I was very moved by some poetry that I found online, and we're going to talk to Margaret Brown shortly about some of the poems that she included in her book. But I also found a website that had some very moving poetry from young people, and how wonderful that they are so in tune with what veterans are and who our soldiers are, far more than we did at that age.
Absolutely. Well, but you think about the length of this war, and some of our babies born when we first started in war are going to be 10 years old. And, when you think of the Vietnam War and you think of the Korean War and you think of, World War II, we're at year 10, almost at year 10?
Well, yeah, when you start to think about the Cold War, it's kind of, and that's when, unfortunately, it becomes more obscure. It's just, oh, there are people fighting. I think when there's an immediate need for soldiers to take care of a specific calling, that is top of mind. But when you have something that's been far more drawn out, and that there are conflicts that are not, I don't want to, I was going to say the word significant, and that's certainly not what I mean, because certainly every conflict is significant to those fighting. It becomes further in everyday importance, and I don't want us to lose that importance in our daily lives.
Absolutely.
That was sort of a long, drawn-out thing, and I was trying to say it succinctly, and there was just no way to say it succinctly, so I'm sorry.
No, the war is long. You go long. It's all good.
Well, but I think when a war does go on the way it has, and sort of blended in from one conflict to another, and we have different conflicts happening, it is harder, I think, for younger people to sort of embrace the importance of it all.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, because it's part of their daily lives, and it has been, lots of times as long as in recent memory.
Sure. And it is such a different environment now, where people are able to talk while people are serving, as they do, whether it's Skyping or by email. It just kind of, it's very different from, my youth anyway.
Right. In a lot of ways, I think it's better. I'm sorry, Sandra. I was thinking,
Lisa.
I grew up during the Vietnam War, and some of my earliest memories were seeing the news clips of the wounded soldiers and the dead ones coming back, and it was just horrifying for me as a child to see that. Not that any war isn't horrifying, but I do appreciate that there's less of that carnage, for our kids to see, and that they are kind of looking at the live military, and that they have a chance to honor the veterans, and that there is more respect all over for them.
There is. Lisa, you'll want to stay tuned. We have Margaret Brown coming up, and her book, That Time, That Place, That War, does illustrate the Vietnam War. You'll want to stay tuned right after these messages.
Are you a military mom looking for help in dealing with the system? Keeping the home fires burning? Well, that's what we're here for. It's Military Mom Talk Radio with Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd. And we'll be right back after these.
Tune in to the Travel Chick Show with Bonnie Kitohata, Mondays at 4 p.m. Pacific here on the Rockstar Radio Network. Bonnie will share with you an hour of travel ideas, experiences, adventures, and tips from her guests. Topics range from local day trips to international excursions, from organized professional vacations to spur-of-the-moment getaways. For fun or business, groups or solo, by bus, car, plane, train, boat, bike, hike, or horse. You'll also hear about travel-related subjects like cultures, travel photography, keepsakes, and more. Whether you love to travel yourself or you enjoy seeing the world vicariously through others, join us and enjoy travel stories from around the U.S. and around the world. For more information on The Travel Chick Show, check out Bonnie's website, thetravelchick.com. Then join us for the show, The Travel Chick Show, live Mondays at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, with your host, Bonnie Kitohata, here on the Rockstar Radio Network. What's ideal for you? Really, what's ideal for you? Being who you are, doing what you love, and getting out and about with friends. What's ideal for you? With your host, Janice Christopher, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Central here on the Rockstar Radio Network. And it all starts with Janice doing just that. Then being open, curious, authentic, and living her life on a quest to discover everything that could possibly make life ideal. Check out the website, whatsidealforyou.com. Studies have shown that 80% of Americans, and probably everyone else too, dislike their work. 80%. The mission then is to turn that passion statistic around, to show how it is possible to live your passions and make a living, or live your passions so that you'll be able to mush through your job until you can change it and watch life's magic begin to happen. It's What's Ideal for You with your host, Janice Christopher. Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. Central on the Rockstar Radio Network.
You put a boot in your ass, it's the American way. Hey, Uncle Sam, put your name at the top of his list, and a statue of liberty started shaking.
Welcome back to Military Mom Talk Radio on TogiNet.com. Covering topics to help on the home front with help from those who know how the system works and how to work the system. It's more fun than a sail at the BX. Now let's get back to it. It's Military Mom Talk Radio. Here again are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd.
Red, white, and blue.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Military Mom Talk Radio today on Veterans Day, or the day after the real day, but today is our day to celebrate. Our first guest was teaching at the English department at Radford University in Virginia, and she was given the creative license to develop a unique curriculum for the honors program that would focus on one topic for the semester. For a number of years, her focus was the Vietnam War. Aided by members of the Vietnam Veterans of America Chapter 138, Margaret Brown witnessed a new generation gaining new insight on a war that some may say we are still fighting. That Time, That Place, That War is an illustrated reference book that sprang from author Margaret Brown's experiences teaching this honors program. Margaret's work, along with poetry by the soldiers themselves and photos very personal and unique to those who were there, who remember, will bring this story to light that may not have been told in any other way. Margaret Brown, welcome to Military Mom Talk Radio.
Thank you so much for having me on a special day, even though this isn't the right day for Veterans Day.
It's the day we have designated to make it our day.
That's correct.
You are, and I have to say right at the top, thank you for being here under the circumstances that you are, because you're not home, you're traveling and you're in a hotel room, and let us know why you are traveling.
I am so happy to be here. I'm in Gainesville, Georgia, and I have asked to be a guest speaker. My first opportunity at a VBA Chapter 774, and I'll be speaking at 7 o'clock tonight.
Wow. And this audience is all veterans or people who are supporting veterans? Who is this audience that you're addressing?
I know that some of the veterans' wives have been invited, but at an earlier event here, a whole congregation was invited to come.
Wow.
So I don't know how many will show up.
What an honor, Margaret. This is wonderful. And I'm sure they're going to be enlightened with all that you have to say to them, because I have to say I truly was enlightened by your book in more ways than one, interestingly, because so many times over the years, my husband, who is a Vietnam veteran, will have said things and I will stop him in his tracks and I'll say, okay, back up, in English, please. Let's talk about what compelled you to present the Vietnam War as an honors program, because you had other sociological programs. What was it that drew you and compelled you to present this to these students year after year?
I think because of my age. This was our war.
Right.
If I had been born male, I could have been over there. And we grew up watching clips from the war on television.
Sure. Was it important for you from a historic point of view or a sociological point of view?
Probably sociological. We did much more listening to the veterans who were kind enough to share Thursday evenings with us. And we learned so much from them that that's why I had to write the book.
Yeah. What was the evolution? Did you develop your curriculum and then sought out the chapter, was it chapter 138, those veterans?
What first happened was I thought, well, I'll teach this course on the Vietnam War because it's an interest of mine, and assigned the books, and we start reading, and as you said, sometimes you had to say to your husband, please talk English. Well, I found myself having to cobble together a very small glossary so that we could get through the books. Now, they were just basic things like incoming, outgoing, in-country, nothing, obviously things that my students needed to know, but we weren't. We seemed very detached from what we were reading. And because I was teaching the course through the honors program, I had a lot of flexibility. So I found a very small vet group in Radford, and they said, certainly, we would like to come. And one vet came the first time just to check us out.
Yeah.
Because when he came back to the world, when he came home, he did not get a welcome reception from college students.
Right.
And here I was, a college teacher, asking him to come talk to college students. And I think it took a great deal of courage for Bobby to show up by himself and face college students, not knowing what could happen or really why I had invited him to come.
Right. And isn't that true, Margaret? I don't think this generation quite understands why a veteran would have that kind of reservation to speak to others, because unless they have really read of the political environment in that era, they wouldn't understand. They don't quite get it.
They didn't until Bobby explained it to them.
Sure.
And one of the most important things that we learned that first night is to say, "Welcome home."
Wonderful.
To any vet, and I didn't know that, but I do now.
Because they didn't get that. My husband didn't.
Well, there's a reason they didn't get that.
Right.
They all came home at different times.
Sure. The book is... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, talk about the book itself, you've arranged it alphabetically and I love so I read somewhere that someone expressed it's from Alpha to Zulu, because it really is, to explain the vernacular of the infantrymen during that war. When did you finally realize with your students that the notes that you were taking, that was somewhat of a glossary, that this was evolving into a book? And why did you decide that this glossary was going to be your published work, as opposed to, say, maybe a more conversational novel?
That's a good question. I didn't know that I was going to write this book. I sat in just as my students did, taking notes from everything they said, from the questions that my students asked, and then the next day when we had class, students turned in a response to the previous evening's program. And the first response I got that I picked up, it said, written in about 3 inches of letters, "This is magic."
Oh my gosh. Oh, that sends chills up my back. That's amazing. Margaret, we've only got one more minute before we have to break for commercial. I want to just quickly address, and then I want to make sure that people have your website, the importance of poems and photos that you've included in this book.
When I started looking for when I started looking seriously at glossaries, there were many, most by military, and you really had to have a military background in order to understand it.
Mm.
And our guides, as we began calling them, we were very protective of our guides. I didn't know what I would do with the information.
Oh, yeah. Margaret, I'm going to give the website on the other side of the break. Margaret Brown, we'll have you back, I promise.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Are you a military mom looking for help in dealing with the system? Keeping the home fires burning? Well, that's what we're here for. It's Military Mom Talk Radio with Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd. And we'll be right back after these.
Are you the kind of parent who just wants their kids to live the life of their dreams? Well, grab your kids and join How to Raise a Millionaire Radio with Ann Morgan James and Jack James. It's a lively interview and call-in show, Thursdays, 6 p.m. Central on the Rockstar Radio Network. This dynamic mother and son team are on a mission. They want to empower kids to dream big and go after those dreams with gusto. They want to fill the world with kid entrepreneurs. Are your kids ready for success? Don't miss their fun antics, lively guests, and discussions. For more on Ann and Jack and their show, check out their website, howtoraiseamillionaire.com. Then join the conversation of lively interviews and call-ins. And let's give our kids the tools and encouragements they need to build a future they can bank on, no matter what the economy throws their way. It's How to Raise a Millionaire Radio with Ann Morgan James and Jack James. Thursdays, 6 p.m. Central on the Rockstar Radio Network. Do you feel like when you watch a cooking show or read a food magazine that the recipes are not practical for a busy family? Do you wish you could have a conversation with someone about the best way to get dinner on the table fast after a long day at work? Are you tired of cooking dinner only to have your family turn up their nose at all of your hard work? Do you want to hear more about healthy living and finding more time to find your passion in life? Well, pull up a chair and visit with Heather Tallman, host of Around the Kitchen Sink, Thursday nights at 10 p.m. here on TogiNet Radio. Like many women, finding balance in life and time to take care of yourself is hard to do. Between managing a career and marriage and children and a busy family schedule, it's hard to maintain a sense of self. And Heather shares how she does it. Check out Heather's website, basilmama.com. Join us for food and a whole lot more on Around the Kitchen Sink with your host, Heather Tallman, Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
There ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Welcome back to Military Mom Talk Radio on TogiNet.com, covering topics to help on the home front with help from those who know how the system works and how to work the system. It's more fun than a sail at the BX. Now let's get back to it. It's Military Mom Talk Radio. Here again are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd.
Welcome back, everyone. We're just finishing up our conversation with author Margaret Brown. Her book, That Time, That Place, That War, is a wonderful book chronicling the language of the Vietnam era, the soldiers of Vietnam. Margaret, before you go off to your conference tonight, and I wish you the best of luck with your presentation tonight, I want to make sure people have your website.
That is www.onewordtelevisionwar.com.
Okay. And we can purchase the book there as well as read about you?
Yes, and it's also available on Kindle and Nook.
Wonderful. I very much appreciate having the copy of this book. We've gone through it, I have to say, quite thoroughly. Margaret Brown, thank you so much. And I do hope once the new year comes along, we can have you back and talk a little bit more about this and other stories.
And thank you, and welcome home, all veterans. That's from me and my 160 students that I taught over 4 years.
That's wonderful. God bless. Thank you so much, Margaret.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we have Dwight Jon Zimmerman. He's a best-selling and award-winning author, a radio show host, a producer, and closest to our hearts, he is the president of the Military Writers Society of America. As you know, we have had so many authors from their organization, and we're so proud to feature its members on our show. Dwight's the co-author with Mr. Bill O'Reilly of the newest book, New York Times #1 best-selling Lincoln's Last Days, which is a young adult adaptation of Bill O'Reilly's best-selling Killing Lincoln. Dwight's here with us today to talk about this book and more from MWSA. Mr. Dwight Zimmerman, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm glad to have you back. We always seem to have not enough time once we get into conversations, as we just did with Margaret Brown. So much to talk about, and I'm very anxious to talk to you about Lincoln's Last Days. This is not your first book intended for a younger audience. Why did you feel this story about Lincoln was so important to bring to readers of this age group?
Well, to be honest, it was my publisher who approached me with the idea.
Really?
Yes. Both Bill O'Reilly and I have the same publisher, Henry Holt.
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned was the adult publisher contacted his counterpart on the children's side and said, Killing Lincoln has been just doing absolutely great, and we think that this is an important story for the young adult market, to introduce kids who would be unfamiliar with more of the details of the final days of Lincoln, the impact at the end of the Civil War, and the ramifications thereof. My publisher thought it was a great idea. When she had her regular editorial meeting with her editors, she threw out the idea and said, who among our group of writers that we work with would be capable of doing this sort of adaptation? And I had the previous year done a similar sort of project. I had adapted D. Brown's classic of the American West called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, called Saga of the Sioux, which has won a couple of awards since then. And so my name was recommended. Laura, my publisher, contacted my agent, and a deal was struck, and I was off to the races.
Wow. Wow. Now, I have to ask you about this collaboration with Bill O'Reilly. Did you actually work with him? Did you work from his work? What was your association?
We had a compressed schedule. Bill O'Reilly is based in Washington, D.C., and I'm here in Brooklyn, New York. And the publisher basically, I was approached just before Christmas, and they wanted to have, this was Christmas of 2011, and they wanted to have the book on sale in August 2012. So this basically was an instant book.
Wow.
Yes. And I just looked at that and I said, okay, I can do this. It is going to be very intense. In addition to that, they wanted to have a visual package because, of course, this being for the young adult market, you need to have as many illustrations as possible. Sure. And the book has so many people who are just names. So the challenge was to find photographs of of these individuals, and I was happy to say that I was able to find almost everybody. And the upshot was that I was given basically 2 months to take his book, Killing Lincoln, and adapt it for the young adult market and give them what amounted to, in print, 150 illustrations. So, as I said, it was a very intense 2 month period in which my wife and daughter had to stay away from me.
That is intense. And I think anybody who has had to even put together a thesis, let alone a publication, they can appreciate what you're saying here. This is phenomenal.
Well, and it was a lot of fun. I have to say, he wrote a very powerful story, and so in that respect, it was easy to work with. Then, of course, the difficult thing is I had to take a roughly 110,000-word manuscript and trim it to 40,000 words, and then add some extra, material. For instance, quick explanations of who some of these people are, because obviously you have the presupposition that adults know who a bunch of these individuals are, something that you cannot expect kids to know. So it was identifying that material, and then obviously having trimmed all of the text to rework the transitions so to make sure that the narrative flowed smoothly. I'm happy to say that everyone was really thrilled. I also suspect they were also very relieved when I delivered what I did. The book debuted at number 2 on the New York Times bestseller list, and the second week on sale, it went to number 1, and I couldn't be happier.
Absolutely. I have to say, I love the way this book is set up almost like a theatrical play with the cast of characters right at the beginning, which I think was wonderful, especially where you're saying you wanted to explain who these people were in history. And was this your intent to utilize this perspective as sort of a theatrical sort of approach?
That came about organically. Obviously, we had meetings, my editor, my publisher, and designer, and we recognized early on that in addition to the core story itself, in other words, O'Reilly's manuscript, we needed to add extra material to help flesh out the story so that kids got a better understanding of what it was like living in Washington, D.C. at that time. Because, of course, this is way before the Internet and no cell phones, in fact, no phones at all. And the fastest mode of transportation was the railroad, which went at the lightning speed of 20 miles an hour. And the fact that everyone normal modes of travel were either by foot or with horse. And to give you what was really, when I'm doing my research, one of the things that really struck me was there were a lot of horses in Washington, D.C., especially during the war. And during the summertime, when the wind came from a certain direction, oh boy, it probably smelled pretty strong.
Wow. And all of these things, I think, are difficult to just, unless you really are writing it very clearly. Kids wouldn't appreciate that. They have no concept. The further our generations go, we have no concept of those kinds of living.
And this is what's so fun for me to do this sort of stuff. I've written a number of books, graphic histories, graphic biographies, and yes, it is a challenge, but it's one that I really love doing because it is such fun to explain these sorts of things. It's very simple and it's very clear, and once you lay it down, it's just like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. We've only got a couple of minutes before we have another break. And I want to bring up your background in that you were executive editor of Topps Comics and your publishing career actually began at Marvel. How did you bridge, and like I say, we've only got 2 minutes, so we'll do a lot more talking about this after the break, but bridging this career to publishing history books, was that really far-fetched?
When I was in my hometown of Devil's Lake, North Dakota, I was honored by, I was their speaker at the Chautauqua earlier this year, and a few years ago I was the keynote speaker at a high school graduation. And I told these, the students and everyone, I said, if the me from now had gone back to me, at my graduation and said, by the way, Dwight, you are going to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, da, 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 da. That me, as a kid, I would have said, you're crazy. Because there is absolutely no way you could have planned or mapped out my eclectic bohemian career. Periodically, I look back at it and I say, this is crazy. I have always I just shake my head over it because I've had so many different opportunities, wonderful opportunities, and I've been so fortunate in being able to take advantage of them, and I've just been having a ball.
Oh, how wonderful. We're talking today with Dwight Zimmerman. He's the co-author of the New York Times #1 best-selling Lincoln's Last Days. We're going to chat more with him after the break here on Military Mom Talk Radio. Be right back.
Are you a military mom looking for help in dealing with the system? Keeping the home fires burning? Well, that's what we're here for. It's Military Mom Talk Radio with Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd. And we'll be right back after these.
Second chances. We all deserve them. And we are all worthy of them. Second Chances. With your host, Midge Noble. Thursdays at 8 p.m. Central on TogiNet is like coming home to warm, fresh-baked cookies, a hug from Grandma, or an enthusiastic greeting from your dog. Second Chances, hosted by Midge Noble, a licensed professional counselor, is affirming, warm, genuine, validating, and thought-provoking. Second Chances is a place to be heard, a place to laugh, a place to cry, and a place to be seen. For more on Midge and Second Chances, check out MidgeNobleSecondChances.com. Then be a part of a show that will change how you think, how you feel, and what you do. Give yourself the gift of second chances and see where it will take you. So take a deep breath, open your heart, open your mind, and join host Midge Noble for Second Chances. Thursdays at 8 p.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
In today's business world, a helping hand or idea that doesn't come with an invoice is a treasured find. And if that happens to you, then you need to pay it forward to keep other entrepreneurs from making mistakes or getting a raw deal. It's called Paying It Forward with Josephine Girassi. Wednesday mornings at 10, 9 a.m. Central. Josephine is going to have the guests describe their accomplishments, the lessons they've learned, both good and bad, and then sharing those pieces of knowledge as we create a movement of paying it forward. For more information about Josephine, her business, and background, you can go to mymomknowsbest.com. Josephine Girassi has always been a problem solver. She saw this need and has turned it into a movement. It's Paying It Forward with tips, tools, and advice and hard lessons learned. These pieces of knowledge can make a huge difference for you, your business, and others. So join us for Paying It Forward with Josephine Girassi. Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m., 9 a.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
Put a boot in your ass, it's the American way. Hey, Uncle Sam, put your name at the top of his list, and the Statue of Liberty started shaking.
Welcome back to Military Mom Talk Radio on TogiNet.com. Covering topics to help on the home front with help from those who know how the system works and how to work the system. It's more fun than a sale at the BX. Now let's get back to it. It's Military Mom Talk Radio. Here again are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Robin Boyd on Military Mom Talk Radio. Today on our Veterans Day tribute, we spoke earlier today with Margaret Brown. She's the author of That Time, That Place, That War. If you did miss the earlier part of our show, it's always available here on TogiNet.com. You can always find our podcasts on our show page. You can always find them on iTunes and on our website, MilitaryMomTalkRadio.com. Our podcast page is now working. We had a little issue with our podcast page on our website, so it is fine. It's happy, and there's lots of podcasts sitting there waiting for everyone to tune in. Right now, we're talking with Dwight Jon Zimmerman. He is the author of Lincoln's Last Days, and we were just before the break talking to you, Dwight, about your eclectic career, and I'd like to talk about some of your other publications, especially in light of your history with Marvel Comics, specifically your publication, The Vietnam War, A Graphic History. My first thought, and I think I mentioned this the first time you were on our show, was Bill Malden's artistic depiction of Willie and Joe during World War II. Were you influenced by the works of someone like Bill Malden and others to bring history to people's attention?
Well, I was very familiar with his work, but his stuff is very different.
It is.
Yeah. And with the Vietnam War graphic history, okay, I was a kid growing up during that period, and I was just so... Yeah, this will come as a shock to you. I know. I was just so puzzled because my whole approach as a preteen and then young teen was, if we're in a war, then why aren't we in there to win it?
Yeah.
I could never figure out, because I'm seeing the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and we're not going in there, and at least not officially, but we're not doing anything to really stop everything that's going on. So fundamentally, this was my attempt to answer to today's generations that question: why? And it's obviously a very complex explanation, and no, it's not the definitive, in detail explanation. However, recognize, because nowadays, you periodically hear politicians say, this is not going to be another Vietnam. This is not going to be another Vietnam, et cetera, et cetera. And especially with Iraq and Afghanistan, it has become worse than Vietnam in some respects, particularly the length. So to kids growing up post-Vietnam, it's like, well, what does that mean? And this is an attempt to explain to make accessible the story of a very complex and divisive war that came the closest to the Civil War in tearing the country apart.
Absolutely. My impression was, and I wasn't trying to compare the actual work to others. I think this generation has become so digitally dependent. Everything is sort of presented to people that I don't want young people to not embrace history because it might be in a textbook and you're required to read it because you have to have so many history credits and so many humanities credits. This approach to me is bringing the same information, or the information that we need new generations to know, in a different light, so that they are going to be more likely to read it, more likely to understand it, because it's done in a completely different perspective. And I appreciate the whole presentation. I was very impressed by it.
Well, thank you. I'm really happy to hear that. That is one of the overarching goals. I was just absolutely thrilled to have this opportunity to combine my comic book experience with that of my, military history background, and I was able to, follow up. I literally had 2 books come out this summer. One was 2 years in the making, and the other, Lincoln's Last Days, was 2 months in the making.
A little different.
Yes, as though it was completely coincidental, but I did have to laugh. The other one was The Hammer and the Anvil, Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln, and the End of Slavery in America. It has a foreword by James McPherson, the Pulitzer Prize-winning author and our greatest living historian of the Civil War. Jim, I've worked with him in the past, and an absolutely wonderful person. Anyway, Wayne Van Zandt, my artist on the Vietnam War graphic history, is also the artist on The Hammer and the Anvil, and I'm just absolutely thrilled with that. It's gotten great acclaim. And again, as we've discussed earlier, it's making accessible in a visual format to kids important periods of our history. We have so much going on right now, and the thing that I want to really stress is history is made by people. Yes, there are names and dates, but it's the actions of these people that make history. And that is really what everything that I do now is to bring that out, to make something old live again. And I have been so humbled by the many opportunities that I've had to do this sort of stuff. I've written right now more than a dozen books on history and military history, and I have enjoyed the experiences of every one of them. And it's finding the different ways to make these periods interesting to people, young, old. My book, Uncommon Valor, about the Medal of Honor and the warriors from Afghanistan and Iraq who received it. When we were doing the research for that, by the way, that received the Military Writers Society of America's highest honor, the Founders Award, which I was completely stunned. And,
wow.
Very
greatly so from what I hear.
Obviously it was great. But in doing the research there, I discovered that there was no one book that had a complete story of the history of the Medal of Honor. There would be bits and pieces, and rightfully so, all these books that talked about the recipients, which they should. But given the fact that since the Vietnam War, we had so few at the time that we were doing the research on the book, there were only 6 Medal of Honor recipients, 2 from Mogadishu and then 4 from Afghanistan and Iraq. There were more afterwards. So people basically forgot what the Medal of Honor was.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, but you can, when you see so few of them having been awarded, it's easy to understand, since 1975 to 2008, Well, that's
Right.
a long time.
That
and
is.
so we approached our publisher and said, look, the original package was to talk about these recipients, but we need to add the story of the Medal of Honor.
Right.
And fortunately, a publisher agreed. So in effect, it's two books in one. But we needed that to give perspective. And the story of the Medal of Honor itself is not a pretty story, as we discovered.
Well, certainly. Dwight, we're going to have to ask you to come back another day. I hope you'll visit us again.
Oh, I'd love to.
We're right at the end. Can you give us a website where people could find your work?
Everything's available on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com.
And they should just look up Dwight Jon Zimmerman, and you will find everything there. Thank you so much for being with us today. So enlightening, and have a wonderful holiday season, and we're looking forward to having you back come 2013.
Thank you so much. I've had a great time, and I look forward to being a guest again soon.
Oh, thanks so much. We are going to close very shortly. I was perusing things to try to just give a little sentiment for Veterans Day. It was something that I wanted to share with everybody. We found something from Columbia Junior High School in Tacoma, Washington. And I was very, very taken back at the words of these junior high students. Here is one of them. He's titled this Heroes. His name is Jared Jenkins. In war, there are lives risked and lives taken. Men and women giving their best to defend what they love. They defend their country, their honor, their people. Some call them soldiers. Others call them heroes. Our veterans have risked their lives for us. They have lived through hell and fought with honor. Many have killed and regret doing so. For every life, there is a soul. For every soul, there is a life. For those who have died, we show great appreciation and remembrance. For those who live, along with them, live horrific memories of battle. Some memories of defeat. Some memories of victory. Our veterans were more than soldiers. They were and still are heroes. And if you go to the Columbia Junior High School website, and I want to say their district is the fifeschools.com in Tacoma, Washington. You'll find more from these amazing junior high students. Unbelievable. And I thank them for publishing those so that we could share them with you. Thank you to both Margaret Brown and Dwight Jon Zimmerman for being our guests today. Next week, we're going to have Debbie Gregory come back and talk a little more about some new things at VAMBOA, the Veteran and Military Business Owners of America. We'll also have Marcella Stretch return and visit with us to tell us what is happening with the parents of deployed service members. And Autumn Arnold is going to give us another pep talk with the holidays coming so we can stay healthy and fit. Thanks so much for being with us today on Military Mom Talk Radio. See you next week.